are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, February 29th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, actually, we got a new link. So, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, well, it's not displayed on the ticker, but that's where you got to go. So don't ignore the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is the new link to go to tip or donate. Sorry, I was trying to not screw that up, but I did a little bit. But yeah, so no longer that long link that you still see on the bottom of the ticker. So that is something that I'll have to fix. But yeah, so that is, now that we got that out of the way, let's get into what we are going to talk about. So starting off the show, we're going to talk about all the Mecole Hardman stuff because he's been in the news the last couple of days. He went on a podcast and talked about his time with the Jets and how that went. And then it also came out that supposedly he leaked the game plans when he was on the Jets to the Chiefs and to the Eagles. So we're going to get into all that in just a second. Then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the Chiefs, actually, some moves that they made or are going to be making. And that is they released wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling, so we'll talk about that, as well as all the L'Jarius Sneed stuff, because it seems like the Chiefs could be franchise tagging him, and then they could flip him to another team. So we'll get into that as well, one of their top corners on their team. So, we'll get into that. Then in the third part of the show, I'll talk about the Browns, what the Browns general manager had to say regarding Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb. And then we'll get into some quarterback stuff regarding Zach Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Jared Goff. Zach Wilson is going to be looking to be traded. Joe Douglas gave them permission, him and his agent permission to seek out a trade. So we'll see how that all plays out, as well as the Cardinals seem to be committing to Kyler Murray with social media post, basically saying he's their franchise quarterback. And then also the Lions gearing up to pay Jared Goff. So we'll get into all that. That's in the final part of the show. So let's get into the first topic, which is discussing Mecole Hardman. So yeah, he's been in the news for the last couple of days. And he went on a podcast. It was the it was called the Pivot Podcast. And he had some things to say. Yeah, the Pivot Podcast with Ryan Clark. So he basically talked about his time with the Jets, and I did have the quotes, some of the quotes from what he said. I just want to pull them up. Again, going to Bleacher Report because I do have the quote. So this is what he had to say. So he said, "You just got a new offensive coaching staff that came in, and there's no standard there. everybody does what they want to do. Granted, the defense has more of a stabilized standard with the coaching staff on that side, so the defense has a standard, but the offense is just like, we'll just figure it out. It's Aaron's show. Let Aaron do what Aaron does. Then when Aaron goes down, it's like, we don't know what to do. He said, I was so checked out like it was over with. I had already talked to Veach and Pat, like, come get me. So he's talking about the general manager for the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Because then the Chiefs obviously traded for Hardman and, obviously caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. So the main thing is, he's taking shots at the offense. Now, I mean, is he wrong, though, in what he's saying? Because once Aaron Rodgers went down, I mean, that was pretty much it for the Jets. I mean, listen, they, finished the season 7-10. At one point, they did have a winning record, so you thought, okay, maybe they could tread water, and then, Aaron Rodgers obviously kept talking about coming back, but that obviously never happened. It just seemed like they were lost on that side of the ball once Rodgers went down. And, yeah, I mean, they basically handed Rodgers the keys once they got him. They brought in Nathaniel Hackett before they got Rodgers. So that was already an indication that was going to happen. Then Rodgers comes in, they bring in Randall Cobb, Tim Boyle, Alan Lazard. They signed Dalvin Cook. They bring in these guys, and it just, 4 plays, and that was it, And again, I did talk about this on a previous show, but you had Tom Brady, right? He changed teams. He went to Tampa. He brings in Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, and this team goes on to win a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers tells the Jets, bring in my guys, Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Tim Boyle. And of course you go out and you sign Dalvin Cook. Now, I thought Dalvin Cook was going to be better than what he ended up being. A good 1-2 punch with him and Breece Hall, but that just never happened. That never happened. And on top of that, it doesn't help when the offensive line is not good. So it just shows that. I mean, listen, I love Randall Cobb, but Randall Cobb's best years are behind him. Okay, he's not the same player he once was. And Alan Lazard is a nice player, but, I mean, he had a rough year with the Jets his first season. And, they didn't bring in a legit backup quarterback. You look around the league, all these backup quarterbacks that were starting, they all would have been instant upgrades over what the Jets had once Rodgers went down. And listen, I know Mecole Hardman, him speaking out on this, it's like, well, what did Mecole Hardman do? I mean, it's not like, listen, he did catch the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, okay? But did he really have a huge impact when he came back to the Chiefs? In fact, you go back to the Bills game, he could have cost the Chiefs that game because when the Bills went for that fake punt and they didn't get it, the Chiefs were driving. They were going to score a touchdown. Then they run that play with Hardman, and he fumbles through the back of the end zone for a touchback. What if the Bills took that, went down the field, scored, and ended up winning the game? That would have been on Hardman. Now, I get what Hardman's saying. Again, he has been on 3 Super Bowl winning teams. 2019, 2022, now 2023. So, he does know a little bit about winning. The Jets, not a lot of play. I mean, Rodgers and Randall Cobb, Randall Cobb actually wasn't on that Super Bowl team, but Rodgers, he has 1 Super Bowl. Everybody else, yeah. They don't really know anything about winning. So I kind of get where he's coming from. Now, he did also get called out by Thomas Morstead, the punter. He came out and he took a shot at Hardman. I want to find the exact if I can find the exact tweet. But yeah, it just, I mean, now what Morstead said, I kind of agree with, because he basically, he took a shot at him, and basically said, a rookie outplayed you and got more playing time than you, and that was Xavier Gibson. Yeah, I mean, Morstead's not wrong. Let me see if I could find the exact tweet, because I thought I had it in my notes, but yeah, I mean, listen, when you got the punter now calling you out, I mean, that's when it's bad. But let me see if I could find it. because I know it was trending. Okay, well, of course I can't find it on Twitter. But regardless, yeah, so he basically took a shot at him. Also, Sauce Gardner, basically said the same thing about, Hardman leaking the game plans to the team, to the Eagles and the Chiefs. That actually did happen. But yeah, Morstead and defensive back Sauce Gardner expressed skepticism about Hardman's comments regarding the Jets. Morstead tweeted a cautionary message about trusting disgruntled former employees and emphasized the need to earn opportunities every year. So basically he was saying, yeah, Hardman, you didn't, earn your opportunities. Because, yeah, I mean, Mecole Hardman didn't do anything with the Jets. And then that was when, Hardman said, all right, I want the Chiefs to come and get me. Now, the reason for him leaking the game plans is because of the fact that he just was getting limited playing time. I mean, once Rodgers went down, I mean, it just, and you had Zach Wilson playing, yeah, it's part of it's because of that. But, I mean, it's not like Mecole Hardman is a superstar wide receiver, and that's what the Chiefs were kind of expecting him to be when they drafted him because, obviously Tyreek Hill, wasn't going to be on the team. And, they drafted him. They drafted Hardman to kind of be his replacement. And, he just never took that next step. So, but he goes to the Jets looking for a role there, and they never really carved out a role for him. And he ended up getting traded back to the Chiefs, and caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. So Morstead is right. Hardman's also right because again, Hardman has been on winning teams, and he also talked about how on the Chiefs, everybody's kind of on the same level. There's nobody really looking down on other players. Everybody's, kind of, like I said, on the same level. With the Jets, it was like you had, like, Rodgers up here. I guess from what I'm getting from it is Rodgers was up here, and then there were other players, like, down here. But, again, like I said, they gave Rodgers the keys, and, they did what he wanted, and it didn't pan out. Again, I mean, for me, I'm an Aaron Rodgers fan. I want him to come out next year and just absolutely light it up, because I don't want him to go down like that. But, I mean, I don't disagree with that. But you know what? The Jets were desperate. They needed something to spark them. They needed a quarterback. And, again, Aaron Rodgers was the best quarterback available. Unless they wanted to pivot and go with Lamar Jackson and try to get him. But that was not going to happen. That probably would have been, like, if the Jets had a chance to get Lamar Jackson, I think you probably go that route just because, again, Rodgers is getting up there in age. But again, Aaron Rodgers was available, and you had a chance to get him, you do it. You do it. It ended up being the worst possible outcome, is he didn't even make it through a whole drive. He gets hurt on the first drive. And listen, the Jets probably would have been better if Rodgers played. I mean, I don't know by how much, because, again, they had so many issues. Their offensive line was horrible. And Joe Douglas was saying how it doesn't seem like they're going to make any major changes to the offensive line because they're banking on Vera Tucker to come back. And, I mean, Rodgers is coming off of a major injury. He's going to be he's 40. And you're not going to try to, tweak it? Well, not even tweak it. Just, I mean, there's got to be a massive overhaul. That just doesn't make any sense. So, if they really don't do anything to fix this line, Rodgers is going to get hurt again. So, but yeah, and then also another thing. So, Sauce Gardner went back to an old tweet of Hardman's. It was talking about snitching, and Sauce commented, "LOL." But, I mean, if that's true, you're leaking game plans to the other team. And actually, the other thing I was going to say, so those 2 games, right? The Eagles game, what happened? The Jets won. The Jets won that game. Now, granted, it was because of, Jalen Hurts throwing a horrible interception late in the game. But the Jets won that game. And then in the Chiefs game, listen, they were losing, and I was there. I was at that game. They were losing 17-0. And then all of a sudden, the game flipped. And, listen, the Jets only lost by 3 in that. They could have won that game. I mean, they picked off Mahomes twice. I mean, Zach Wilson, that was probably the best game I've ever seen Zach Wilson play, and I was in attendance for that. And, they could have won that game. Now, there was a couple of bad penalties at the end. But they played the Chiefs tough. So those were the 2 games that Hardman leaked the playbook to, supposedly. Allegedly. Is in, a game they won and a game they could have won against the eventual Super Bowl champs. Well, defending Super Bowl champs, and now, they won again. So, I don't know. It's wild, but yeah, I mean, this also is a reflection on the Jets too. I mean, they're just, I know the report card grades came out for all the teams. That's something that I definitely want to touch upon, over the next, couple of days. Well, tomorrow's Friday, but over the next few shows, definitely want to dive into that. But yeah, I mean, it's a bad reflection on the Jets and just how, Rodgers gets there, and it's just, he's kind of in charge. And, I mean, you got your general manager coming out and saying now that you're not really going to make any significant changes to the offensive line. Yeah, I don't know about that. So, we're going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about the Kansas City Chiefs more. We'll talk about some of the moves they made. Very long title here, but of the segment. But yeah, so we're going to talk about them releasing Valdes-Scantling and also L'Jarius Sneed trade rumors, as the Chiefs kind of have a plan as to what they're going to do with him, possibly. And that's what we'll get into when we come back from our first break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about some of the moves that the Chiefs made and could be making, and that is regarding wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling and also cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. So we'll get into Valdes-Scantling. So the Chiefs have released Valdes-Scantling. Not really too much of a shocker. Now, there's another wide receiver that's still on the team that maybe you would look at and say, maybe you should release him instead. But again, this is also a money thing because Valdes-Scantling, him being released now, that saves the team $12 million against their salary cap. Now, supposedly the reason for that is because, they're preparing to potentially use the franchise tag on L'Jarius Sneed. Now, they could also be looking to trade L'Jarius Sneed because the Chiefs have allowed him to explore trade opportunities, as reported by NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport. So, he's a key piece on that defense, but, and I guess the Chiefs, they figure, hey, we could get something if we trade him rather than just, letting him go. But yeah, so that's something that I was reading, that they did this because they want to franchise. It looks like they want to franchise tag Sneed, and then, if they end up trading him, they'll do that. Because again, you can get a return for him. Now, the other thing too is Chris Jones. They're going to throw a lot of money at Chris Jones. If they end up losing Chris Jones, that is going to be a huge loss on the defensive side of the ball. And Sneed is a nice player too. So, that's, if they end up losing him and trading him, but they're going to have to figure out how to replace him. But Chris Jones, I think, is, we can all agree, is more of the priority here if they're trying to bring him back, because, he's the best defensive player on the team. He's one of the best defensive players in the NFL, period. Now, the Chiefs are reportedly open to trading Sneed if a long-term deal cannot be reached. That's also what I was reading up. So we'll see what ends up happening. Now, also with the general manager, Brett Veach, saying at the scouting combine that if Sneed or star defensive tackle Chris Jones cannot be re-signed by the start of free agency next month, the team is prepared to use the franchise tag on them. So it's also on the table for Chris Jones as well. So yeah, kind of from different things that I've been reading, there's different things the Chiefs could do. But yeah, so they end up cutting Valdes-Scantling. And yeah, he was a problem this year during the regular season with some of the drops. But he made some big catches. He had a couple of big catches in the Bills playoff game. And he also had the game-sealing reception against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. That iced it. And you also had him catching the go-ahead, well, at the moment, the go-ahead touchdown in the Super Bowl when the 49ers fumbled on the punt return. But, yeah, so so some of his stats from his couple years with the Chiefs, he caught 42 passes in 2022 and 21 passes this past season, contributing significantly in playoff games. Now, this was a big game he had. This was against the Bengals in the championship game in 2022. He caught 8 passes for 116 yards and a touchdown. Also, like I said, had that key reception that iced it against the Ravens in the championship game and the touchdown in the Super Bowl as well. Valdes-Scantling ranked 5th in receptions among Chiefs receivers during the 2023 regular season, with rookie Rashee Rice leading the position with 79 catches. So again, it was a money thing, and he was brought in because you got to remember, you go back to the 2022 season. I mean, the Chiefs, they trade away Tyreek Hill, and you're like, oh, how are they going to replace him? They signed Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They signed Juju Smith-Schuster. They also traded for Kadarius Toney during the season. They drafted Sky Moore, right? They drafted Sky Moore, or was Sky Moore undrafted? Well, I know he was drafted in my Dynasty rookie draft, but he might have been undrafted. I think he was undrafted, if I'm not mistaken. And he was selected by the Chiefs in the second round. Oh, never mind. I don't know why I thought he was undrafted. But yeah, he was selected by the Chiefs in the second round of the 2022 NFL Draft. All right, so that was my mistake. Yeah, the second round, 54th overall pick. I don't know why I thought he was undrafted. Maybe it was it might have been Justin Ross. I think he was the one they signed that was undrafted. But yeah, so they replaced their they did their best to try to replace Tyreek. Well, didn't really replace him. But listen, the Chiefs went on and they won the Super Bowl. Then, you lose Juju Smith-Schuster, and the receiver core was, there was a drop off, and even more. And you draft Rashee Rice. And the Chiefs somehow they worked their way through it, and yeah, like I've been saying, and they get back to the Super Bowl and they win it. But yeah, Valdes-Scantling had a drop problem. Sky Moore had a drop problem. Kadarius Toney, him too, and also lining up off sides. So yeah, there were a lot of issues that the Chiefs were somehow able to work through and get to the Super Bowl and win it. But yeah, so Valdes-Scantling is now a free agent, and we'll see where he ends up. I know when I saw on Twitter, they had the graphic of the Chiefs released him, and the first comment was, I said that yesterday, I believe it was like, and I said, Aaron Rodgers. Right now, and it was like it was a gif of LeBron James or a video of LeBron James making a face. So, maybe Valdes-Scantling ends up going to the Jets. Who knows? Yeah, so then the other thing too, so I also had, so back to L'Jarius Sneed. So the franchise tag for cornerbacks is valued at $19.8 million for the 2024 season. Sneed was a fourth-round pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. He became a key player on the Chiefs' defense. 10 interceptions, 40 passes defensed, 4 forced fumbles, and 6.5 sacks in his career. Again, one of their better defensive players, but they could be looking to, franchise tag him and then possibly trading him. But we'll see what ends up happening. I mean, I don't know. If I'm L'Jarius Sneed, listen, you want to get paid, but, I mean, at the same time, this team could be, working their way to three-peating. And you want to jump off now? Now, again, if he goes to another good team, I saw a tweet that said, the Falcons are a team that's looking for cornerback help. Now, I'm not saying the Falcons are championship caliber, but, if they upgrade a quarterback, I mean, that team's going to be good. Now, I don't know. I wouldn't say they're Super Bowl contenders, but that's a good team. But I don't know. I feel like it's different for us because we look at it and we're like, well, your team just won the Super Bowl. Why are you going to want to leave? But it's because you want to get paid, ultimately. And, I mean, listen, I know people complain about players and the outrageous amount of money that they make, but the guy wants to get paid. That's his right to go do so. If he does indeed leave, this team that, could definitely three-peat, they definitely can. But I'm interested to see, what the Chiefs end up doing with the wide receiver position, because that is something that they're really going to have to upgrade. And I feel like they could definitely, I mean, they're definitely going to find a replacement for Valdes-Scantling. I mean, obviously you're losing a good player in L'Jarius Sneed, but again, I feel like the Chiefs are a well-run organization. I mean, look at what they've been able to accomplish the last several years. That they're going to be able to they're going to be able to find replacements for these guys. Now, Chris Jones is different. That's going to be where if you got to find a replacement for him, it's going to be difficult. But I feel like they could find replacements for L'Jarius Sneed and most certainly Valdes-Scantling. But again, only time will tell. But I'm curious to see what they end up doing at the wide receiver spot. Are they going to draft somebody, or are they going to, look to free agency? I know. Speaking of wide receivers, I know the Colts, they're working on an extension with Michael Pittman, so it looks like he's not going anywhere. I know the Bucs are really prioritizing, signing most of their free agents back. I mean, they're trying to work out deals with Winfield Jr. and Baker and Mike Evans, and also supposedly Levante David as well, because I think I did mention how he doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay a Buck. The Bucs actually did release Shaquille Barrett, which I think I did mention that. So, yeah, that's another player from the Super Bowl going to be going elsewhere. But, yeah, I mean, listen, the Chiefs, they got to upgrade the wide receiver position. I know, listen, you got Patrick Mahomes, who's an all-time great, but, you want to surround him with better wide receivers. I mean, you could tell, listen, he had a couple of meltdowns on the side. Well, I mean, the Bills game was a meltdown. I know the Patriots game, he was, frustrated because, Kadarius Toney bobbled it and it led to another interception. But, you want to give Patrick Mahomes some better receivers. Hey, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster comes back, because I think he definitely regrets going to the Patriots, because that was rough. But I mean, listen, Valdes-Scantling, like I said, they're going to be able to replace him. I mean, listen, they got 2 Super Bowls with him. They're going to find a replacement for him. Sneed, like I said, I think they could find a replacement for him, but it's going to be tough. Because he's a good player, and you don't want to lose him. But if he wants to leave, they like I said, they're going to try to work on getting him traded. If that ends up being the case. But Chris Jones is you can't afford to lose him. That is going to be the player that is going to be really tough to replace if that ends up happening. Which again, we'll have to see how it plays out. But that's a player you cannot afford to lose. But like I said, Chiefs are a machine. They're well run. They're going to figure it out. And and it also helps when you have the best quarterback in the NFL. And you got Andy Reid. This team is they lose guys, but they just it's like the Astros in baseball. They'll lose guys, but they just keep going. It doesn't matter whoever they lose. I mean, the Astros, look at the players they lost, and they they get back to the World Series. They're always in it. They're always in the championship games. And as a Yankee fan, it stings. But yeah, so that's pretty much it when talking about this. Let me know what you guys think about the Chiefs releasing Valdes-Scantling, and what should end up happening with L'Jarius Sneed. Again, I think you prioritize bringing back Chris Jones over L'Jarius Sneed. Again, you're losing a nice player if they end up trading him. But, let me know what you guys think about that. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about what the Browns GM had to say about Nick Chubb's future as well as Deshaun Watson's recovery. Before I go to break, just want to remind you guys again, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And like I said, it's not on the ticker. We'll have to fix that. So yeah, gsmcpodcast.net. So, like I said, when we come back from our second break of the show, we will discuss the Browns and what the Browns GM had to say regarding Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Browns and some of their comments regarding two of their players, Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb. So Browns GM Andrew Berry, he spoke at the Combine. He talked about Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb. And one of the things that I mentioned because I wanted to talk about it was, there's some rumors, speculation that maybe the Browns end up cutting Nick Chubb. Now, Barry did say that, he doesn't want that last, that game in Pittsburgh where he got hurt. He doesn't want that to be the last time that Nick Chubb, is running the football for the Browns. But what I was looking at is his contract situation. And that if they did cut him, they would save almost $12 million in salary cap space with only $4 million in dead cap. However, he did say, like I said, keeping Chubb is a priority for the team. They're in full support with Chubb. What happened in week 2 against the Steelers, that was horrific. That was a horrific injury. And, and Nick Chubb's a guy that, has been a great player for the Browns for a long time now. Is one of the more consistent running backs in the NFL. And this was not the first time that he had a knee injury. It also happened in college, I believe. It was just a tough injury. And again, the season, there were tons of injuries. And it really was unfortunate that it had to happen. And Chubb's a guy that, has been relatively healthy his whole career with the Browns. I mean, there was he's missed some time, but he's been relatively healthy. And, it was unfortunate what had to happen to him. And, you're coming off of a significant knee injury. And, talk about running backs and how they age. It's when they're getting in their late 20s. I said this yesterday talking about Barkley. Yeah, they're getting older. And, again, it doesn't help when you're injured, coming back from a significant injury. So, I could see why there's some speculation out there that the Browns could cut him. But it seems like, from what I'm seeing, maybe that's not the case. I also did see that the Browns were unlikely to bring back Kareem Hunt, and they're going to roll with who they have. They have, Jerome Ford, who did a nice job, so he's probably going to be the primary backup going into next season. And we'll, again, this is something we'll have to keep an eye on with Nick Chubb. But also, he did talk about Deshaun Watson, and he said that Deshaun Watson is expected to start throwing in March as part of his rehabilitation from his season-ending shoulder surgery. Barry expressed optimism about Watson's progress and eagerness to see him back on the field during the spring. And listen, this is a Browns team that dealt with a ton of injuries in 2023. And even though they did have a lot of injuries, the team still finished 11-6. And that is why Kevin Stefanski, or as he was called at the NFL Honors, Steven Stefanski, he won Coach of the Year. Listen, next year's going to be a big year for the Browns. And, if you got a healthy Chubb and a healthy Deshaun Watson, this team's going to be good. Now, Deshaun Watson did not play great before he got hurt. Was not playing good. Then he gets hurt. First of all, the Browns had that big win against the Ravens. Big comeback win, right? And I think that might have been the last game that Deshaun Watson played before he was ruled out for the rest of the season. But let me just, and it's just, he ended up finishing the season. So he had 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, 84.3 passer rating, over 1,100 yards passing. That was the last game that he ended up playing. Was against the Ravens. 20 of 34, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Yeah, so it was like, wow, signature win. And then it comes out, he's out for the season. Shoulder injury. But it's not like he was playing great. And, even when he, started some games in 2022, he didn't look good either. Now, again, that's because of the huge layoff. It's been a while since he last played. But, this is going to be a big year for the Browns coming up in 2024. And if you can have these two guys healthy, you're in good shape. Again, the Browns dealt with a ton of injuries. You had 5 different starting quarterbacks, including Jeff Driscoll, who they kind of signed just spot start. See, again, now it's like I'm talking baseball. They brought him in just to play the final game of the regular season. But yeah, you had Driscoll start a game. You had P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, DTR, and Joe Flacco, and of course Watson. It's just, yeah, it was a mess. But this team still somehow won 11 games, which is unbelievable. And again, that's a credit to Kevin Stefanski and that coaching staff. And you know what? And you know what? That top defense as well. But yeah, I mean, they had some injuries on the offensive line, running game as well. They had to sign Kareem Hunt back because he was still a free agent. When Chubb got hurt, they brought him in. Yeah, I mean, they still were able to make the playoffs. And yeah, the playoff game didn't go how they wanted it to. I mean, the Texans, really brought it. That we really didn't see. I mean, we did see January Joe for a little bit, but then, that kind of flamed out. A couple of pick sixes, and yeah, Browns ended up going home early against the Texans. But yeah, I mean, listen, with all the injuries they had, it was unbelievable that they were able to get into the playoffs. And look, the Deshaun Watson trade has not really panned out. And you look at, and again, just talk about the Texans. Texans were the team that traded him, and the Texans, they won the division, won a playoff game, and the future is bright for them. The Browns, they're going to be a good team, but you thought after it did take a couple of years, but the Texans, they're back up to being now a good team going into next year, and they have so much cap space that, again, like I've been talking about recently, they could be big spenders. So, but yeah, I mean, the Browns, they're playing in, the AFC South, like I said, that's going to be a more competitive division. Probably, arguably, the best division in football is the AFC North. Listen, we could talk about the Steelers and their quarterback situation, but with Mike Tomlin, that team does not finish with a losing record, ever. With Mike Tomlin. Even in these couple of years post, the Ben Roethlisberger era, they're still a competitive team. And they made the playoffs somehow. That was another team that made the playoffs, and you're like, how did they do it? But yeah, you're gonna have a healthy Joe Burrow coming back next year, hopefully. The Ravens are gonna be back. Division's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Now, the Browns, they had they did beat the Ravens. They beat the Bengals in the beginning of the year. When Burrow was still dealing with the calf injury. But also, I feel like this doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's the fact that I've probably mentioned this like way back during the season, but the Browns own Joe Burrow. Especially in Cleveland. The Week 1 game, Browns-Bengals, that was an ugly game. And I even said, I'm like, yeah, the Browns played good against Burrow, but I still ended up picking, of course, the Bengals because that's just how my mind works with this, my spread pool. Which, hey, that's the first time I've talked about that in a while. Well, but we'll have to wait till next year to bring that back up again. But anyways, yeah, listen, the Browns, they could definitely, if these guys are healthy next year, yeah, they got a shot at winning the division. You saw how David Njoku was playing with Flacco. He was unbelievable when Flacco took over. You still got Amari Cooper who's getting older. They did trade for Elijah Moore. You want to see, they need to get another receiver, I would say, if I'm the Browns. But, and the defense, of course, led by Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year. Listen, this team is going to be competing for a playoff spot. And listen, they were able to do it even when they weren't healthy and get into the playoffs. But if you got these guys healthy, that definitely makes them a better team. Even though Deshaun Watson has not been great, right now I would, you would take him over PJ Walker and, DTR, Jeff Driscoll. I mean, listen, Flacco did a nice job, but Flacco over the course of a 17-game season, I mean, I don't know about that, especially at his age. But now Flacco, I mean, who knows what Flacco's future is? I mean, I think I think that's it, But and it was nice. It was nice to see a quarterback that I grew up watching come back and, light it up for a little bit. It was cool to see, because again, quarterbacks that I grew up watching, a lot of those guys are gone, or are going to be. What remains. I mean, you got Rodgers, Stafford. Those guys are the next couple to, call it a career at some point, which is going to stink. Because you grow up watching these guys, and listen, we're in great hands. Like I've been saying, we're in great hands with the quarterbacks we have now. But again, it's just going to be sad when the final couple guys from my kid years, when they call it a career, it's going to be sad. So I mean, it already is sad with most of them being gone. But yeah, so but again with the Browns, back to the Browns, it's something we got to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, with Chubb, it's like, oh, they could cut him, and then you got the general manager saying, well, we want to make sure we keep him. And I hope they do, and I hope, again, Nick Chubb's another guy that I hope he bounces back next year and, and plays well, and the Browns are going to need him. But again, he's getting older, coming off of a significant knee injury. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but, I'm hoping for the best for him, and, again, we'll see how Deshaun Watson, responds to his rehab. And, next year, if he's healthy, is it going to be more of the same before he got hurt? Or is he going to, find, himself back to, how he was when he was playing, great football with the Texans? Are we going to see that Deshaun Watson? So, but we'll, again, only time will tell. Only time will tell. So with that being said, we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about a few quarterbacks. We'll talk about Zach Wilson. We'll talk about other quarterbacks as well. Jared Goff, Kyler Murray. We'll talk about them and a potential new contract for Jared Goff. Also, it seems like the Cardinals are officially committing to Kyler Murray with their social media posts. So that is what we will get into when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to talk about a few quarterbacks. Zach Wilson, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, we'll talk about them. So we'll get into Zach Wilson first. So I was going to talk about it when I was talking about the Jets, but this Mecole Hardman stuff, that had to be its own segment because there was just a lot to unpack there. So With Zach Wilson, so yeah, it appears that his time with the Jets is ending, which we kind of figured was going to happen. So Joe Douglas confirmed during a news conference at the Combine that the team has given permission for Wilson's agent to explore trade options. Zach Wilson, he was taken with the number 2 overall pick in the 2021 draft. Started 33 games over 3 seasons with the Jets, including 11 in 2023. And, yeah, it didn't go well. It did not go well. Despite being under contract with guaranteed money, a trade for Wilson seems unlikely unless he adjusts his contract or takes a pay cut, as his guaranteed salary of almost $5.5 million may, kind of scare off some potential suitors. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, basically, Zach Wilson will not be on the Jets next year, which, again, we all kind of figured that was going to be the case. And he was supposed to be the replacement for Sam Darnold. And it's funny because my friends did say that if the Jets had Darnold, they would have been, with this team right now, they would have been better off. And you know what? Yeah, you're probably right. But again, is that really saying that much? Listen, Sam Darnold had the Panthers contending for the NFC South last season, or 2 years ago, I guess now, against Tom Brady. And, the Bucs edged them out, finishing 8-9. So, maybe they should have held on to Darnold, but I don't know. New era, new regime, and Zach Wilson, like, at times he showed some promise, in his first season. Again, I go back to the Titans game where, the Jets won that. The Titans were a playoff team that year. Actually, yeah, the Titans ended up finishing as the number 1 seed that year. Yeah, so they, the Jets won that game. You thought, okay, maybe this is the guy that maybe this is our guy. But it just, again, that was just one moment. But yeah, so with this move now, the Jets got to look for a backup quarterback. That's the bigger thing. Now, first, last thing on Wilson, we'll see who potentially, trades for him, or if he ends up getting released, who signs him. Now, I think I saw something that maybe the Rams he could be a backup there. But we'll see. We'll see. But now with the Jets, they got to figure out, who are they going to bring in as an insurance policy to Aaron Rodgers? Because when Rodgers got hurt, and Mecole Hardman said it, the Jets had no idea what they were doing. They had no plan. And they put Zach Wilson in. And listen, if Rodgers ended up playing the whole year, that definitely, I feel like, that would have helped Zach Wilson, because then he could learn under Rodgers, and instead of just getting thrown into the fire immediately, maybe with, that could have helped. But yeah, that ended up not panning out. And I think also, when Rodgers got hurt, Zach Wilson really couldn't get in contact with him. I think I talked about that as well. But yeah, it's just, I know if you're a Jet fan, it's just, you really got to hear, like, do you really want to hear all this? But yeah, that's just that's what was going on. But yeah, the Jets, they failed to bring in a legit backup quarterback for Rodgers if he did get hurt, and then he did get hurt, and it ended up being Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyle. And there were other options out there, like, Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz. Matt Ryan, I think, said he wasn't really thinking about coming back because now he's doing games for CBS. But I was saying Carson Wentz. Listen, and that doesn't mean like Carson Wentz would have came in and just lit it up. But I compared to what the Jets had, I feel like Carson Wentz was the best option. The Rams picked him up. And listen, against the 49ers backups, what did Carson Wentz do? Carson Wentz won a football game. So, and listen, it's not like Trevor Siemian won a couple games for the Jets. But you know why? Because Breece Hall, like the last few games of the season, was running wild. Really finished the season strong. Had a solid year, but really, like, against the Commanders and against the Patriots as well, they really leaned on him in that snow game. But still, Trevor Siemian won a couple games. Tim Boyle, yeah, that was, now he's going to be a part of that play on the Black Friday game where, Hail Mary turned into a pick six for the Dolphins. Yeah, it just, yeah, that wasn't good. But again, you look at all the backup quarterbacks that played this year, and again, they all would have been upgrades over what the Jets would have had. And I said that in the first segment. So it's just the Jets really need to. That's a must, is bringing in a backup quarterback, even though there's some other areas they need to improve on. But yeah, so that's all the Zach Wilson and Jets stuff. So let's get into some other things. So the other two quarterbacks I want to talk about, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray. So we'll talk about Jared Goff first. So Jared Goff has had a roster bonus, $5 million roster bonus, and it doesn't affect the team's timeline for negotiating a new contract with him. Now, this is what Boomer Esiason said. He said that this deal could be 4 years, $200 million. The Lions are expected to sign Goff to a long-term deal. He has 1 year remaining on his current contract and is set to make $27.9 million next season, including a roster bonus. Goff has expressed his desire to sign a long-term deal with the Lions. And, with the Lions, he's thrown for over 12,000 yards, completing 66% of his passes, and has a 24-23-1 record as a starter. And obviously was a part of the team that got to the championship game. The Lions, they won their first playoff game in 30 years. So he would join, if he gets a $200 million deal, he would join some quarterbacks that are averaging at least $50 million per season. And also, I know we talked about, and other shows have talked about this too, is on the sports network here, Dak Prescott wanting to reset the market and make $60 million a year. So yeah, Goff would make at least $50 million a year with this new deal. And I think he deserves it. Definitely deserves it. Again, really happy with how things turned out for Jared Goff. I've talked about this, a few times, with, him being traded and, the Stafford-Goff swap. And it looked like Goff was just kind of going to be a stopgap quarterback there, and the Lions were going to find, a quarterback through the draft. But listen, the team really turned it around. I mean, the first year was rough. Then the second season, I mean, you send Aaron Rodgers to New York after his, that you beat Aaron Rodgers his last game ever as a Packer. You beat him. You prevent the Packers from making the playoffs, even though they had nothing to play for. And then you were one of the best teams in the NFC in 2023. And listen, they could have been playing in the Super Bowl. They could have, but it's just they let that lead slip away against the 49ers, and they ended up going home. But listen, this team is going to be good again next year. And, Jared Goff is going to be a big part of that. So I'm really hoping that, he gets his money and, the Lions go from there. They also have, Amon-Ra St. Brown that they're going to try to, sign him to a long-term extension too. You want to keep him around. He's one of the, most consistent receivers in the NFL. I would say I feel like he doesn't get talked about as much as, some of the other top receivers, but yeah, he's definitely up there. Definitely a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, this is a young team, and with Goff at quarterback, yeah, they're going to continue to be good. And I know Dan Campbell, he received a lot of criticism over how he called the game, being overly aggressive, and hopefully he learns from that and kind of tones it back a little bit, because again, I said how Brandon Staley was like that too, and listen, I loved it in the beginning, but then it got a little too much, and you got to know when to take the points. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of other issues with the Chargers, but yeah, I mean, that was one of them that kind of led to his downfall, and I don't want that to happen to Dan Campbell, because again, I'm a Dan Campbell fan. And I want to see this team, continue to be successful. And, it's just unfortunate how the season ended. But, yeah, again, they're going to be good next year. They're going to be back. And, they have their quarterback going forward. So that's the Jared Goff discussion. So he's going to be in line for a new contract at some point. And then finally, Kyler Murray. So I know I talked about this on a previous show, but I know Jonathan Gannon came out and said that Kyler's their quarterback. But the Cardinals, they tweeted a picture of Kyler, and the caption was, "Our franchise quarterback." So, any speculation on Kyler, going somewhere else, it's not going to happen. Now the Cardinals, they do have a top 5 pick, so they could definitely, maybe draft one of the receivers that's there, like Marvin Harrison Jr., if he is available, and that would really help their offense. Kyler ended up finishing the season with around 1,800 yards passing, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in 8 games, with 244 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. And listen, the Cardinals, they're, trying to rebuild. And listen, I think Kyler, when he's healthy, is a solid quarterback. I know he's received a lot of criticism. That one and only playoff game against the Rams was rough. But, I think, he should be the guy for the Cardinals moving forward. And we'll see, how they build this team back up. You definitely saw the Cardinals looked like a different team when he came back. I mean, they won the first game that he started, and then that was against the Falcons. They went into Philly and beat the Eagles. I know the Eagles were in a free fall, but you know what? That's a tough place to play, and I don't think many people expected them to win that game, and they did. So we'll just have to we'll see what the Cardinals end up doing. But yeah, so Kyler's going to be their quarterback moving forward. Jared Goff is going to be the Lions quarterback moving forward. They're looking to get him an extension. And, of course, we just talked about Zach Wilson. And, he's no longer going to be on the Jets. So, with that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't